This meeting to order. Roll call.
Travis,
Here.
Simone Rogers,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Shaw,
Here.
Navarra, Osei, Del Ponte,
Here.
Lopez Caniva.
Here. Okay, we'll rise for our Pledge of Allegiance. And if Dr. Jacqueline Johnson, if you will lead us on the pledge, please.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I hereby open this public hearing at 7:03 o'clock for the purpose of listening to public comment for the application for a waiver of modification of school code mandates action of Chapter 105 of the ILCS 5/18.8.05F2D2, school improvement days for the school year 2024-2025 as authorized by Section 223.25G of the school code. And we have no public comments.
And just for the Board of Education and the public, we have previously in our calendar not used school improvement days. These are slightly different than institute days. They create an opportunity for staff to do curriculum work, to do department work, across buildings work. So ultimately, when we get a little bit down agenda and take a look at the calendar, you'll be approving this waiver or recommending to approve this waiver, and then they're already in the calendar that we'll talk about for approval that you saw last month, and we made just a few changes I'll point out to you this month. Any questions from the board just on school improvement days? Come to it a little bit later. Okay.
I'm hearing that there's no public comments. I hereby close this public hearing at 7:05. All right, next, all right. Let's see. Do we do the oath first or the action item?
You have to vote on it first.
Okay, all right, do I have a okay,
First and
all
then
right.
swear the other.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve appointment of Lance Thies to fill the unexpired term of the Board of Education?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been motioned by Dr. Shaw and second by Mr. Travis. Roll call.
Shaw,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Simone Rogers,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. All right, okay. All right, so where do we stand?
Yeah, I think you could go.
Anywhere,
Mrs. Lopez
okay,
can go
all right,
wherever you want
okay.
for the
All right.
longest oath of office
All right.
in public office.
That's right, so.
Don't need to memorize.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, raise your right hand and we're gonna do this together. I
Lance Thies,
do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education for Blockport Township High School in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of my ability. I further swear that I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets. I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board while respecting the privacy of students and employees. I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a public board meeting. I shall abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels. As part of the Board of Education, I shall accept the responsibility for my role in the equitable and quality education of every student in the school district. I shall foster with the board a sense of participation of the community, formulate goals, define outcomes, and set the course for Lockport Township High School. I shall assist in establishing a structure and an environment designed to ensure all students have the opportunity to attain their maximum potential through a sound organizational framework. I shall strive to ensure a continuous assessment of student achievement in all conditions affecting the education of our children in compliance with state law. I shall serve as education's key advocate on behalf of students and our community schools. It's the vision for Lockport Township High School. And I shall strive to work together with the district superintendent to lead the school district toward fulfilling the vision the board is creating, fostering excellence for every student in the areas of academic skills, knowledge, citizenship, and personal development. Congratulations.
All right.
All right, Mr. Dees, would you like to introduce your guests?
Yes.
Here.
My wife Ann is with me tonight. We have 2 kids, Sydney and Jack, both at college tonight, so they obviously can't join us, but I should have sent them the link so that they could at least watch. But I didn't think of that, but they were both.
Always live on our website.
Yeah, right,
Always
exactly.
live.
They
Easy
can
to
always
enjoy.
review it. They can watch me say the longest pledge in America. But yeah, they're both sophomore and a freshman at Trine University in Angola and Ball State University in Indiana as well. So.
Great.
All right, congratulations. I always feel like when board members take the oath of office, you get to the end of all those paragraphs for a volunteer job, and you should say, is that all I have to do?
There should have been a water break.
Wow. Okay, a few things to do.
Yes. Okay. All right. Yes.
All right. We have a few people here on behalf of Dr. Jacqueline Johnson. I'm very proud to announce, just tell a little bit, board, about Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson, tried and true, applied to us twice. And just a little bit of story about Dr. Johnson. I want to tell you a little bit about her professional qualifications. But Dr. Johnson applied for the assistant superintendent for personnel position here that we went through November, December, and into January. And there was many, many moving parts. As you know, Dr. Green was a successful candidate in that. But one of the things that inspired me is on the final interviews, we had 3 panels. We had a staff panel, we had an administrative panel, we had a student panel. And I was sitting with the student panel debriefing candidates. And Dr. Johnson had an immediate electric connection with the students. And as she left, one of the students said, you know, Dr. McBride, you know, I've seen Mr. Kandari at events, and I know, you know, he's, you know, personnel, that's mainly dealing with the adults, but, you know, we don't really see Mr. Kandari every day. And as Dr. Johnson kind of left the room, she said, but her, I'd like to see her every day. And that, you know, made me think, And we had a very, very qualified field of candidates, both for the assistant superintendent for personnel and then also for principal as well. I found some of those candidates for assistant superintendent for personnel, and even though she had been through 3 rounds of interviews, many, many panels, Dr. Johnson, probably more than any, you know, any other candidate, knew us and said, hey, I will come back. And that always, I think, takes a little bit of daring because you're jumping into a process a second time. But if she's not familiar with us now, then you surely will be. Just a few things about Dr. Johnson. She began her high school education at a place that's near and dear to my heart, Glenbard East High School. Right attitude means success, where actually Dr. Cristofero and I both served. I served as assistant principal, and Dr. Cristofero served as a teacher, and then began her journey as an English teacher, most of that in High School District 218. Worked her way through being a division chair, being a dean, many of those different stops that would prepare you, and currently serves as the Director of Equity and Articulation. So looking at how the district does programs that you'd be familiar with, equal opportunity schools in the district, recruiting, retention, hiring of staff, but then also articulation, and that is work with 13 different middle schools that Community High School District 218 is 3 high schools. And so all of the feeders that go into that. Long history of excellence. The minute that she applied for any position, a dear colleague of mine that I know really well called me and said, "Hey, you need to look out for this person." I think it would be safe to say that many of the people that have encountered Dr. Johnson in this whole hiring process have been energized just by her presence, the energy that she brings. My noble assistant, Mrs. Maxwell, who was part of the final interviews for principal. We did that on a Friday. We got back on a Monday, and Mrs. Maxwell was in my office Monday morning and said, "Wow, Dr. Johnson," right? So without further ado, I'm recommending Dr. Johnson to you to replace Dr. John Greenan. Dr. John Greenan will start in his new role. He's kind of already started, shadowing Mr. Kandari, July 1st, 2024. His last day would be June 30th, 2024. Proposing your vote and recommendation for Dr. Johnson to begin July 1, 2024 as principal of East Campus.
Thank you. All right, do I have a motion to approve the appointment of Dr. Jacqueline Johnson as
Can we
East
have-
Campus principal? I'm sorry.
Can we have a stand up?
Oh, we do have to have her stand up. There she is, you know what I mean? And Mrs. Johnson, there are quite a few people here tonight. So you can either, customarily we vote, we approve you, before the celebration, but you can, it's up to you, Dr. Johnson. You want to, introduce your supporters.
I'm sorry.
And you did
No,
say
it's
they're all
okay.
going to be here tomorrow at 7:45 a.m.
They're not. They have school. Thank you. So I'm Jacqueline Johnson. These are all my family. This is like my family. So we have Ronell, we have Cher. This is my husband Derek, my daughter Jordan, my auntie Maddie, my daughter Taylor, my sister-in-law Rochelle, my son Derek, my bonus nephew Logan, my sister Kat, Renee, Robert. Then we have Robin, we have Colleen, Karen, Ray, and Janine.
All right.
Yes, and so this is like these are my people.
It's your tribe, right?
Yeah, and there's other people who couldn't be here, so they're watching.
Yes,
Yes.
we can have Mr. Slager check out, how many live stream, if you just enhance our viewership, although one or these. Yeah. Anything on your mind, Dr. Johnson?
I just want to say thank you, hopefully. I know you need to vote still, but I'm just really excited to be here at Lockport. This has been an amazing process for me. I've never had a job interview process where I was excited and not as nervous every time I came in to meet more people. I feel like I've met like 70 people. I was like counting, I'm keeping tabs. How many people do I know now? Because I'm new to the community, but I just look forward to being here and working with everyone, so thank you.
All right, just need that motion.
So moved.
Second. It's been motioned by Dr. Shaw and second by Dr. Shimon Rogers. Roll call.
Travis?
Yes.
Teeth?
Yes.
Shimon Rogers?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Shaw?
Yes.
Lopez Caniva?
Yes. All right, motion passes.
All right. Mrs. Lopez, do you want to take a 5-minute media
Yes.
break?
Sure.
Our acting director of public relations is not here, so some of us have to. She's doing a conversation with the District 92 board tonight on the referendum. So we want to take like a 5-minute break,
Yes.
let people, handshake, high five. We need to get pictures of you with your family, with you, with lots of different things. You know what I mean? So let's do that. 5-minute break.
5-minute break.
Yeah.
this is the first month in a long time that we've had no resolutions.
Right, yeah, well, you know what, we have resolutions, believe me.
Yeah.
You'll hear in the principal's report, we're gonna save them for next
Right,
month when
okay.
all winter sports are.
All right, going on to our reports, student government.
Hello.
Hey,
How's everyone doing tonight?
good to see you guys.
I'd like to start off talking about the academics, especially during second semester, and how it may be challenging for some students, trying to maintain their current grades and everything, especially with APs coming up, and especially maybe some teachers second semester might be cracking down on the work, it might be getting harder and stuff. And yeah, so, do you have anything to add?
I'm gonna say definitely in the February and March months are definitely the coursework gets more rigorous, and I feel like teachers aren't communicating as well, and I feel like I'm having lots of tests in the same day in the same week. Actually, for this week, I'm not having a lot, but last week I had tests almost every day in different classes, and it was just a lot of coursework going on. Anything else?
No, I think you guys covered it. That was great.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ali Mussini. I'm a junior. And so I wanted to talk about a little bit about the calendar year for next year. So we had some things. We're adding school improvement days, which was a great benefit to the teachers, where they can have time to do coursework or, whatever they need to do. Basically something like an institute day, but, just more beneficial towards the teachers in a way. The students love that we have winter break. We have exams before winter break, so we don't have that layover time during, we have that layover, when we come back from the semester to finish off that first semester. So we're gonna have a shortened first semester and then a longer second semester, which lots of the students love that idea versus, just having that coming back and finishing off the semester and, doing additional work or projects for that first semester. So they loved the idea of, just having finals, winter break, and then you're starting that second semester. You guys do you add anything to that, or?
Yeah, I would say too with the school improvement days, as much as it is with curriculum planning for teachers, I think the extra 3-day weekend sometimes can be helpful to catch up on homework and sleep too. I think sometimes it can build up during the week. So even this Monday, yesterday, I used to catch up on a bunch of my longer assignments. So I think those can be really beneficial to the students as much as teachers.
Oh, yeah. And having something like twerp and just having that busy weekend, where you have that dance, you want that 2 days to recover, having that time to do those assignments and having that time to complete them.
Yeah, and then to talk about twerp,
Just bring up one, something with you, Lean. I don't know if you want to share with the board, and I've shared at various times, Eid.
Yeah.
You want to talk
Oh,
about
yeah.
the conversations
That's
that you and
fine.
I have had about
Oh, yeah,
Eid?
definitely.
Sorry to interrupt you, Deanna.
So Eid's a Muslim Islamic holiday where many students, take off the day of Eid, to celebrate. It's sort of like, a holiday compared similar to Christmas, where you have that celebration with your family, you go to, the religious church or, the mosque for Muslims, and they take that day off where many students are not in attendance. And we were talking about possible, having Eid off for the next calendar year. But me and Dr. McBride were talking, and we found out that it was on a weekend. Eid changes every year. So there's 2 a year, and it usually, it just falls in the, week or out of the week. So it depends on the year. But no, lots of students do take off that day, and it's,
In nearby school districts, like School District 230 is taking Eid off. This year is interesting because, strangely enough, Eid falls on state testing this year. So at least the way that we do state testing, there'll be a number of students who will have a half day on that day. And then next year it begins at Saturday sunset, March 29th, and then is Sunday, March 30th. So already not a school day for us, but just a conversation that, you know, we're having with a number of our students who practice Islam and just making aware of it. Sorry, Deanna, to interrupt
Oh,
you.
all good. Yeah. Twerp this weekend. I think it was great. We switched the gym, or the field house. Usually we have like, I think we did the stage going vertical one of the other times for homecoming, but we had it horizontal again, which I think it just makes it easier to get in and out of the dance. But I think that second area that we did where there's water, there's not like the flashing lights, and it's just kind of like a break from the dance. I think that is continuing to be pretty successful in getting water. I know that was a big issue, some of the dances, when you just, there's nowhere to get water. So I think that's super successful, and yeah, I think it was a great experience. And then also the temperature was very low on Saturday, so I was a little bit worried about the line, like going into the school and just like waiting outside, but I didn't have any issues with it. I was right into the school as soon as I got out of the car, so I think the process of like getting into the dance was pretty smooth too. So, you guys have anything to add?
Great. Any questions from the board? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
Nice night.
Have a good night.
Too.
Come safely.
AFT report, Ms. Fishline.
Good evening, everyone. Only 22 days till spring break, that's good news, right? Also, just to kind of build off of what the students just said, another successful twerp is in the books, but it wouldn't have happened without our deans, our supervisors, our staff, support staff, everyone that it takes, our maintenance staff who turned this place in, you know, from a dance club into a robotics stage overnight. So just wanted another shout out to them, and to our robotics club for hosting their first competition. We do have our retirement party. It is set for Wednesday, May 22nd at Zachary's again. And we will also be having our elections for our officers will be in May. So those are a few things coming up for our union. All right. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you. ASB Governing Board report.
Well, this week is the national state conference. Is it Kosovo? That's how you pronounce it, Dr. McBride?
Yeah, COSPA.
Kosovo.
So,
It's in Dallas, and I'll be there. You guys should look at the your email. There's emails that come from IASB. There's one coming up. I think you registered me for it's understanding the report card. Was that the one? I think that was it. It's like 3 sessions.
Okay.
So it's something, you know, if you want to get more information, you know, they have the training out there. You just have to,
Get registered.
you know, either you, and I get emails all the time, so, and I
Is
read
that
the
the one that's
emails.
coming up?
Huh?
That's the one coming up this week? That's something I thought I seen there.
I can't
For the
remember.
highest, forget what date it is.
Yeah.
But I'll be out of town, but I was gonna sign up for it.
Yeah. But there's 3 sessions for it. Or you can go on the ISB website, and they'll tell you what's coming, you know. Yeah, I have Kathy to do it for me because for some reason, I can't seem to log into my ID,
Okay.
so, yeah. Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, so, yes, I think that's all going on. I don't know if anything else going on.
When do you leave for COSPA?
In the morning.
Tomorrow morning? Safe trip. All right.
And I'll be back Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
all right.
All right.
Yeah, safe travels.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, foundation board report. I don't see
I will
this.
serve in the stead of Angela Adolph. Angela is out at Cheney Monge tonight, speaking to their Board of Education about the central referendum. So she is not here. Just, I think the word is scholarship applications. Ms. Del Ponte and Ms. O say we need you to spread the word. It's just amazing. About $300,000 in scholarships are given away, but it's sometimes surprising how low the applications are. Students sometimes convince themselves, I can't apply for that. That's for some other type of student. But really getting the word out there. Third annual Taste of Lockport already underway. Again, City of Lockport is being just great about having us. Foundation's planning on hosting movies again this June in Porter Stadium. 25th annual golf outing, June 12th, a little early, folks. This time. I believe that is a Wednesday. So Wednesday, June 12th. Mark your calendar. It's just a fun event. Whether you're a great golfer or like me, a horrible golfer, it's 9 holes. It's a lot of conviviality. It's great. And then the next foundation board meeting is March 12th at 4 p.m.
Thank you. All right, legislative report.
Legislative report. It is that time of the year. There's just a lot going on. This is the time of year, just to remind the public and the board that bills are proposed. They start to move into Senate and House committees. So far, the pacing has not been as high as in the past 2 years. So just a couple things out there. One is some new mandates for manufacturing education. We would already come into line because of the type of manufacturing education that actually Mrs. Kishline's department already engages in. But this would be adding some mandates to preserve or require those programs in state high schools. Self-defense education, we already offer this in a variety of different pieces in PE, but it allows students to petition their district if they would like to have self-defense. High school voting, this would be a mandate to add to social studies and civics education, just the how-tos. How do you register? Where can you vote? What is early voting? What is the difference, like in the state of Illinois, between a primary, a consolidated election, a general election? That would be a new mandate. House Bill 2401, diversity in literature, would require an incorporation of diverse authors, African Americans, women, Native Americans, Latinx, Asian authors in high school curriculum. House Bill 4219, fentanyl education. In health, specifically about what is fentanyl, the dangers of fentanyl, that education and prevention. Modification, House Bill 4265 to the Illinois Accelerated Placement Act automatic enrollment. That is the law that is currently a law right now that if students score at any level meets or exceeds in their state test, right now there's an auto enrollment into the next highest level of study. If it's English language arts, you exceed. When you take your 8th grade test, you go automatically into English honors. This is a modification that it's not an automatic enrollment. It opens the door for that student, but allows for local, mainly family decision making to be made, and then recommendations by the school. House Bill 4173, professional educator license in the trades. This is opening up to make experience in carpentry, manufacturing, tool and die, welding, easier to obtain a teaching certificate at the high school level. And then qualifications, House Bill 4277 on American Sign Language, relevant to us. We offer American Sign Language. Bringing this, rather than being a separate licensure on its own, bringing this under the licensure for world languages. So acknowledging it as a world language. Mr. Navarro.
Hello, I'm here.
So any questions about that? That is all moving through committee. None of those have moved out of committee yet. Yeah, Ms. Del Ponte.
I have 2 things. First thing, for the high school voting, I know Chelsea's not here, but I'm sure she would say if there's any way we can keep the voting registration
like keep that or make it an annual thing, I think that would be great. I know we got over 100 students registered to vote. I think that's the number. And it was great. I mean, we had a compass session and it was pretty well attended in the library, and I think it would be a great addition to an annual thing that the school does.
Right, and this was what Ms. Del Ponte is referring to, is that Will County Clerk does a program for high schools to come out, one, talk to high school students, voluntary, about voter registration, and then do on-the-spot voter registration if you're 18 years old, obviously. Well, you can register if you're 17, if you're 18 on the day of the election.
Yeah, and the second thing I want to do is just advocate for a sign language 3. I took 2 years and I loved it. I adored it. It was my favorite class, and I wish I could have had a third year before I graduated.
It sounds like you would have enrolled in a third year.
Oh, I absolutely would have, or a fourth year, or an AP if they had.
All right.
Really,
Got it, understood.
that's all. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, put your wish list out there.
Yeah.
Any other board member questions?
The one about the, I think it's House Bill 4265.
Yeah, Illinois Accelerated Placement Act.
That's a modification to something that's not implemented yet, right?
It is implemented. So the Illinois Accelerated Placement Act is already the law of the land. There's this piece of automatic enrollment, and I think the feeling by this proposal is that it doesn't allow a lot of maneuverability for families or for teachers to weigh in to say it's not automatic, right? So it sort of puts a little bit, it paves the way for students to go into that higher ability if they select to do so, but it doesn't make it automatic that they have to go into that higher ability level.
Because I thought we had an issue with the timing of when the test was being done.
There is, right, because when do we use the state test, but we worked that out with our 8th grades.
Oh, okay.
Right? When our 8th graders take their state test, that's in the spring. So it's very difficult for us to get those results, make changes, staffing and sectioning. So we also have 7th grade, and then we also have another data point, the PSAT, which our feeder schools were great about this year. Big change, we went to online, the College Board went to online. And so in the fall, we took the PSAT as an acceptable test to see where students place. And that is the test that we use for placement.
Okay.
Yeah, so that got resolved. Great question.
Thank you. All right, we have no public comment follow-up.
Nope,
All right.
no public
Okay.
comment from January 22nd.
Any public comments? At each regular open meeting, members of the public and district employees may address the school board during the public comment section of the agenda. Individuals appearing before the board are expected to be respectful and follow the guidelines of policy 2:230 and policy 8:30 available upon sign-in. Public comments are important to the board. However, it is customary not to respond on issues until time has been taken to gather information and discuss all options. Lack of action or response at the time of comment does not imply lack of interest in the issues brought to the board. And we have a Miss Tammy Hayes.
We just have one.
Okay, so good evening. My name is Tammy Hayes. I'm going to read so that I try not to make any mistakes here. I just wanted to make a comment for the board members to hear and possibly for the public to hear. I was at a recent board meeting. I can't remember if it was a finance meeting or not, but Dr. McBride had made a comment that you as a board had chosen not to do any major renovations, upgrades, or repairs to Central. And then I'm going to also reference back to a much older board meeting where I had made a comment about, Ms. Johnson had made a comment that you all as a board, outside of the 2 newest members, had made a decision to have Dr. McBride speak for you all. So with that comment, I have to believe that the first comment is truth, that as a board, you all have chosen not to do any major renovations or changes to Central as of a certain time. Recently, I was at one of the community discussions regarding the referendum at one of our feeder schools. And while I was there, Dr. McBride spoke about how the board had come to him, or he had gone to the board And in early 2020, it started to discuss what might be done with Central, what its future was, renovations, whatnot. Of course, it was 2020, and then COVID hit. So that got me to thinking, the last referendum failed in 2011. And 2020 is the first time the board decided to start talking about stuff. It's 9 years. 9 years. As it's been touted many, many times. It's a 95-plus-year-old building. It's a 95-plus-year-old building. I think it's 115 now. So it had to be over 90 years old in 2020. It was definitely older than that, or it was definitely of an older age in 2011 when that referendum failed. Now, the only person that's been on the board long enough to remember the referendum would be Ms. Johnson. She was here in '09. Now, I know as a board, you guys are volunteers, and you're relying on the staff and the administration to bring you information. So Dr. McBride started in 2019. Ms. Stephanie Croy started in 2016. Mr. William Thompson, in charge of maintenance, of course, you all know who he is, he started in 2016. So then our board members, Johnson 09, Keneva 13, Shaw 18, Travis 19, and obviously Navarro was 21, and then the two newest. My question just really stands that really, as a board, had you all decided not to do much with Central in all those 9 years? That's a long time. You know you have an older building, you know you have something that needs to be done to it. So I got to looking, and with the help of some others, I was able to go back to the 2016-2017 budgets under capital projects funded in the district website. And it looks like the projects since 2016 are as follows. East Campus, $1.4 million in parking lots, $78,000 visitor press box, $10.7 million science lab additions, that was 2016-2018, $1.8 million technology area renovations 2020 to 2022, $986,000 for auditorium lighting and audio-visual upgrades, and that was 2022 to 2024. $4.5 million for a roof, 21 to 24. Total East Campus projects since 2016 is $19.4 million. Anybody want to guess how much money you've spent on Central since 2016? $379,000. That should be shocking to all of you. And I understand the board is volunteers, and you're relying on people to bring you this information. This is a 90-plus-year-old building at bare minimum. Now it's 115. I think that it's time that you really dig deep into your financials and you figure out where the money can come from to start making projects and renovations one thing at a time. 9 summers. 9 summers. How many classroom windows could you have done in 9 summers? What if you had done 3 windows per class, done windows in 3 classrooms per summer? At 9 times 3, that's more than half the building. I just really think that not only do you all need to hear it, I think the public needs to hear it too. You need to understand what you're representing by allowing others to talk for you. Thank you.
Moving on to communications.
We do have one communication. It is from Jeanette, and she stated, thank you. Thank you and the Board of Education for the well wishes for my daughter, Carme. Again, thank you for allowing time off for administrators and employees when a new family member is born. Maternity leave is so important. And she sent us a little photo, little baby.
We'll pass those around.
Sure.
Me first.
She visited today, so it was very nice.
Oh,
Both of
that's
them were
nice.
here tonight.
Thank you. All right, you have there the Freedom of Information requests. And we're going to move on to our approval items. Just need a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of January. I could probably do both of those together. I'll do the, I just need a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes and the closed session minutes of January 22nd, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned by Dr. Shaw and second by Dr. Shimon Rogers. Are there any questions to those minutes?
I believe I was on the phone to those, right?
You were.
You were.
You were, Mr. Travis.
Yes. All right. Hearing none, roll call.
Shimon Rogers,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Navarro,
Yes.
Tice,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yeah.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. All right. Next, we have the approval minutes of January 24th, 2024. Do I have a motion to approve the open session meeting minutes from the January 24th, 2024 special board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned by Dr. Shimon Rogers and second by Dr. Shaw. Are there any questions to those? All right, hearing none, roll call.
Johnson,
Yes.
Navarro,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Tice,
Yes.
Shimon Rogers,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the closed session meeting minutes from the January 24th, 2024 special board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned by Dr. Shimon Rogers and second by Mr. Travis. Are there any questions to those? Hearing none, roll call.
Travis,
Yes.
Shimon Rogers,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Tice,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Navarro,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. All right, board expenses. Do I have a motion to approve the
Can I-
February, I'm sorry.
Want to make a correction? Mr. Theus, he can't vote yes, that's a stain, right?
Yeah, I did want to
I was gonna
interrupt,
ask
but we
that. Yeah.
probably have to amend your
Yes.
past four votes
Yeah.
just to abstain.
Yes.
You know, so if you're okay changing all of your
Yes.
votes to
It's a-
abstain, you know, on those, you were not a board member at
I
that
was
time,
gonna say, I was
so,
gonna ask the
sorry just
question,
to
but-
initiate you
All right.
into that,
All right.
you know, but we just got rolling, so I was gonna remind you
Don't
at the
vote,
end.
you can vote.
Yes. Yeah,
All
right.
right, okay, but I think everything else you can. Yes, I think everything else you would be able to. All right, we will then change those. Yes,
Yeah, she combined them.
I combined them, yes. Okay. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the February board expenses?
So moved.
I can second that. All right, it's been motioned by Dr. Shaw and second by Ms. Lopez Caniva. Are there any questions? All right, hearing none. Roll call.
Shaw,
Yes.
Tice,
Yes.
Navarro,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yeah.
Shimon Rogers,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. Yes. All right, next we're having the treasurer's report. Ms. Croy. There's the board.
Good evening. All right, a couple things I'd like to point out in the treasurer's report this month. You'll see the normal reports. Dr. McBride, do you want to go over the financial reports for me, please,
You bet.
first? So in our financial report, just a quick overview. I know this is Lance's first meeting, so quick overview of what you're seeing. You're seeing the treasurer's report, which is the summary of our cash and investments for the beginning of the month to the end of the month, transaction history. Can you scroll for me, please? So then at the end, this is just the statement of, like I said, it's the cash balances. So please scroll to the next report. Disbursement summary, also checks and expenditures going out. Cash flow report. So that information in the first report that talks about our cash and investments and the changes in those is now reflected in here as well, okay? So what you're seeing is, I think I've pointed out in previous months, is that we collect our funds, our revenue, twice a year, basically. So September is the last big chunk. And what you're seeing is in green, it's revenue collected for the month, red is expenditures for the month, and then the fund balances combined of all funds of the district is the blue bar, okay? So you see that's where it starts at the beginning of the fiscal year and is depleting over time, right? So you'll see that the September is where we collect most of our revenue, but in all of the other months shown there, we are outspending what we're taking in. That's because the bulk of our money is coming in September. The next big bulk will come in June. We collect some in May for those early payers, right? Tax payments are due June 1st, so we'll get some in May, but the rest of it will be in June. So we collect the revenue in the two pieces, and then we spend throughout the rest of the year. So if we look at the balances in January, we're just a smidge under 70 million as of January in all funds combined. And that is going to have to cover us, right? In addition to any goal of keeping a certain level of funding through the next few months before we collect any revenue again, okay? So, Dr. McBride, can you scroll to, I think it's the statement of position then next from here? This is the investments, the detail of the investments that are in the top part. So statement of position. So how does all of the cash pieces and that cash flow relate to this? So the cash from the beginning and investments is tied to that 70 million at the top. Okay. Then at the bottom is the fund balance segment. Yep, perfect. Thank you. So actually, I probably need to be at the top. You're right, because we can't fit the whole thing on the screen, and I need to see the funds. I need to see the funds. Yeah. So and since the fund balance is close, so the district accounting lesson, right? We report all of our financial statements on a cash basis. Basically, money that we record it as a revenue when we get it. And we record it as an expenditure when we pay it out, right, ins and outs. We don't record accruals, which would be our liabilities, right? So as of right now, we have a whole bunch of purchase orders outstanding where we've ordered things, but we have not paid for them yet. Those would be something in an accrual statement we would record as a liability. We don't do that here. The liability section here is very small, and it really only encompasses things like payroll-related money that we're holding. For example, flexible spending accounts that employees have money taken out of their checks. We hold the money until they spend it. So our liability section covers only things, little things like that, right? So all that being said, since we report primarily on a cash basis, our cash balances are almost the same as our fund balances. And like I pointed out, that 70 million is the fund balance as of January 31st, 2024. However, that's the total, right? So something very important I think to point out is in addition to us reporting on a cash basis, because we're a public school district, we have to report by fund, right? Similar to governmental entities, we have to, by law, keep our money in certain buckets, so to speak. It's similar to a like an escrow account where when we collect money, it goes into one place and is held to be spent on that exact same thing, whatever that purpose is, right? So our funds are educational. Our educational fund is for the purpose of all of the educational expenses. So the bulk of the expenses of the district for us to do our primary purpose, educate students. So it's all of our educational staff and educational support staff. It is all of our supplies and materials and purchase services, all related to that educational like goal, right? The service that we're providing. So operations and maintenance is everything to support the buildings, right? So all of Mr. Thompson's staff, as well as all of the supplies, cleaning supplies, maintenance equipment, things like that. One thing I'd like to point out in that fund is while we account for, actually I'll get to it when we get to the capital projects. So then the next fund is our debt service fund. Debt service is primarily for us to pay our bond payments. That's the only thing that happens in that fund. We collect property taxes for the bond payments, we pay the bond payments, right? So what the board will see in the upcoming year is because we abated the property tax related to the bond payment for the next year, there won't be as much property tax revenue going in there in the next 12 months, okay? instead, I'll be doing a interfund transfer that was approved in that those resolutions. You'll be seeing that on the next report, because I have to do it by March 1st, according to the resolution.
Right, and the way that that abatement works is in your operating levy is basically a discount back to all taxpayers. You know, we talked a lot about that in November and December, because our debt service is where it's at. We're abating that back. You know, the referendum proposes an increase in debt service, so you're putting this more on the operation side in the levy and discounting that back. So lower revenue coming into that debt service fund.
But the expenditure by law still has to come out of that fund. So
Right.
money has to come in to cover it. So you'll see almost a $670,000 transfer from the educational fund to the debt service fund by the end of February. So it'll be in next month's treasurer's report. Okay. Transportation fund covers exactly what it sounds like it covers, all of the expenses related to the bus barn, their employees, the buses, the outserviced transportation for special education programming, for outplaced students, all of those related transportation expenses.
Later in this agenda, there's purchase of new buses. We do that, with the huge fleet that we have. That's a safety issue. You know, we replenish buses once they hit their lifetime, keep them on our regular roll in order to, make sure that we've got serviceable buses. Their mileage gets huge in a very, very quick amount of time.
And we're actually putting a lot more on now than we normally would as well.
Right now.
So that will come back to haunt us in a little bit, I think. There might be, right now, we typically replace 6 buses a year, with the exception of 1 year in the 10-year cycle where we replace 8. Down the road, as the 8 buses we're using currently age, we may have to do a couple of years of 7 to replace things earlier because of additional mileage being put on the buses right now. Municipal retirement is a statutory fund for just employees of the district that are not licensed staff, right? So they're part of what's called the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, and the levy that's related to funding their retirement goes there. Social Security, Medicare, exactly what it says, same purpose, right? Capital projects. So the Capital Projects Fund, we're required for all of our large capital projects to put those expenditures in this fund. That doesn't mean all capital projects go out of that fund. So there are some capital projects and some major equipment expenses and replacement expenses and repairs and maintenance expenses that are out of the operations and maintenance fund. So only our largest expenses are in there. And then because that fund only has minimal revenue going into it, interest income and as well as impact fees by developers, the majority of those projects have to be funded by transfers from the operations and maintenance fund. So the board sees that report. You'll see it in here a little further down the treasurer's report. And then finally, working cash. What working cash is, it's a little bit hard to explain, but it's intended to be like a fund that can loan money in a cash flow need to other funds, to other operating funds. When I first started here back in 2016, there were a couple of funds, actually it was transportation and operation and maintenance, that we did do some borrowing between the working cash fund and those funds in these upcoming months. In March, April, when it hits the lowest point of our cash, those funds did not have enough fund balance in them, so we needed to borrow from that working cash. And then as soon as taxes were collected, we would repay it. Okay. So the purpose of going through all of those fund balance or those funds is to kind of point out that of the 70 million fund balance, we can't use that for whatever the board decides to use it for. We have to use it for certain pieces, right? There's no way that you could direct me. I would have to tell you we can't do it. That you could direct me to use, $60 million for a project. I don't have that because I only have, 70 million, but I only have in the operations and maintenance and capital projects fund $3 million.
And conversely, your obligation, we're in a people business, right? 85% of what really all schools, I think nationwide, you'll see, and certainly in Illinois, the cost is in people, right? So conversely, if you as a board said, wow, 57 million, that's a high balance in the education fund. let's swing that, how about, whatever number you would set as a board, 20 million, 10 million, over, that's restricted. That really has to go because you have a responsibility to pay the salaries of the people that are on staff. So each one of those funds is restricted. I think Mrs. Croy's example of an escrow fund, all of us who are homeowners get an escrow fund, you understand that that's not liquid cash that you can do with it as you will. And one reason why I asked Mrs. Croy to bring up each one of these is that we've seen out in the community a belief that there is some large bucket of $76 million, $70 million in cash that is separate from all of these accounts in a thing called fund balance. But really, any kind of fund balance that aqua line that you saw here really is the sum representation of each one of those funds. This is the total, and in many ways, this sheet indicates the restrictions on each one of them, what they actually are. It just isn't a simple situation where you can take your total fund balance, as Stephanie said, swing it over to whatever it is that you as a board see fit. These funds are highly restricted. That's not even getting into the restrictions that you have of funds that are in investments, where you've taken the taxpayers' money, you've invested that, and then that matures to pay, bills that you have because you only collect taxes twice.
And I think Ms. Croy, I think you used even pie chart, showing where the education is your biggest
It is,
pie.
it's
Absolutely
absolutely
it's
the
all your
biggest.
teachers, everything, your staff payroll, everything, health benefits, everything on that comes out of that education fund. Whereas you can see those other funds are very small. So, yes.
And I think actually Mrs. Wheeler and I were looking at that earlier. I think the education fund's about 70% of the total
Of
fund
those,
balance
yes.
at this time.
It's the bulk of it.
And that makes sense because the vast majority of our employees are being paid. That's where our biggest expense is, right? Our biggest expense is salaries and benefits of our employees. And the salaries and the health insurance and the dental insurance all get paid out of the education fund of all of the educational employees, right? So that makes sense that that's where the bulk of the funds are. That's our educational, that's our purpose, right? Any questions on any of that?
Are the allocations set based on the budget? Is that how over time, are those amounts allocated because the budget priorities are each one of these, 10% of it goes to capital, whatever, 5% goes to transportation, 70% goes to education?
So we don't decide the percentages, we decide who we're hiring. So the way our budget process works, it starts now, right? January is when it starts. And then the first big piece of it is the staffing. So coming up on Casimir Pulaski Day, we are having tally meetings, sectioning meetings, whereby we, as an administrative staff, look at all of the sections needed to be able to put all the students in the classes that they've elected, okay? So then we figure out how many sections are needed and then how many staff members are needed. So that staffing, how many staff we'll need to pay will be based off of that. So that staffing then leads into the budget. So we don't say, it's going to be 70% to the education fund and then back into how many staff that can be.
Sure.
We figure out how many staff are needed first, and then we set, okay, because that's our educational purpose, that's the first thing that has to go in the budget. All the other things fill in after. We fill in the staff first, then we fill in the related benefits to them, and then we fill in, okay, what else can we do? Okay, so.
And that's in the ed fund. Some
Right.
more controllable funds are operations and maintenance, where Mr. Thompson is constantly, monitoring projects that need to be done. Obviously, capital projects, you're controlling those. Transportation, we're controlling those funds. A little bit more controllable than responding to student requests, right? We just have a little bit more hand in that, and then all of that, in this semester building is going to come to you in July, where we present a tentative line item budget. Tentative because we don't even have all of the data with the June 30th close of our books to fully flesh that out. We're showing you some of the line items.
Can you scroll scroll to the education or the expenditure page here? Because then we can look at even in the operations and maintenance fund and the transportation fund, the biggest line item is still salaries. So if you look at the operations and maintenance fund, the budget for the salaries of all of our maintenance, custodial and ground staff is still one of the largest expenditures there. The only thing larger than it in the budget column is the other financing uses, and all that is the transfer of money that needs to go to pay for the capital projects. So capital projects and salaries and benefits are still the two biggest pieces in even that fund. And the transportation fund should be the same way. The biggest expense, so if you scroll down to that transportation fund for me, please. Thank you. You'll see that the two biggest things, salaries and then purchase services, the biggest piece of that is we outsource special education transportation for students that are placed at other educational facilities. Those are the two biggest pieces of the budget there. So salaries drives a lot of it, and then we fill in with the other pieces like Dr. McBride said. Does that answer your question?
And I know you have a big report, you know, from our colleagues at WJE, and want to respect your time and their time on this. But I think really the important point that I asked Mrs. Coy to walk everybody through, you get some great questions from Lance we're going to answer for the entire board, is just helping the public, reminding you, kind of going over for you if you have any questions that come up of what is a fund balance. I do see quite frequently references that, you know, like I said, there's $70 million, there's $76 million, almost as if though it's, you know, it's safe someplace and you can, as a board, just grab that at will and spend that as you would like. That's not the way finances are set up in the state of Illinois. It's not the way our finances are set up. It's not the way that school boards meet their obligations to the various parts of your total operation and your total financial health. Many of those are restricted because you have these obligations, you know, already that you have to fulfill. Stephanie, anything else from the
Treasurer's report?
Yeah, just I don't want to miss that.
The only other piece is there is a reference in here to the tentative amended budget update. That is directly linking to the report that I gave to the Finance Committee a week ago. And all it is listing a list of items that I'm starting to look at for the tentative amended budget that the board's going to see in April. Some of those items are, you know, most of them relate to our Lincoln Way North expenditures and the central ceiling project expenditures. And then there's going to be other related pieces to it as well. So, you know, the additional teacher day we have to pay for parent-teacher conferences that we have to make up as a result. The traveling teacher stipends will end up increasing, Lincoln Way rent, additional supplies we've needed as a result of the move to Lincoln Way, some purchase services, WJE, some DLA work, as well as the projects that we're gonna start with demolition of the ceiling and then ultimately repair of the ceiling, right? Some of that will fall in this year, some of it will fall in next year's budget. And then on the flip side of that, I'll be looking for anywhere that I may have under budgeted revenue that I can kind of help offset this, right? And one of them, of course, is interest income. I always project conservatively, and I assume that the interest rates are going to go down instead of up. So, of course, they've been a little higher, so I'll be able to make up a little bit of that, but it definitely won't make up the full cost. I'm estimating right now that there'll be an additional about $3.5 million as of right now in expenses that were not originally budgeted. And then the interfund transfer I was talking about related to the debt service abatement, that was not in the original budget because the board didn't approve it until December, so that'll be reflected in the amended budget as well. So that was the last thing I wanted to point out. If anyone had any questions on what they might see there, it's really just so that you know what to expect when I start to show documents in April.
Do we know yet how much our insurance is gonna cover? Central thing?
No,
We
and
got still wait.
No, but I'm expecting the answer is going to be none.
Yeah.
So.
And the reason why that is that, you know, mention the public to the board, and yeah, I think that's why, you know, I think WJE's final report tonight is going to be very illuminating for you. I don't want to steal their thunder because they're the experts. But in a crude, layperson's term, any of you have a home, and the analogy I use is your furnace is old and you need to replace it. You wouldn't call Allstate or State Farm and say, I have an old furnace. Can insurance, insurance is there if you have a flood. Insurance is there if your house got struck by lightning. There was a gas explosion that was unexpected. I think what our colleagues from WJE will share is that age is the culprit, right? That you have this system that had aged, and that's why it failed. And you have a number of different systems at Central that behind them, HVAC, roof, something I'll share just at the beginning of the report, have quite a few zeros behind them, well beyond the budget and the fund balances that Mrs. Croy just showed you.
So I've after WJ presents tonight and they've provided a executive summary, their full report will follow, and I'll be able to forward that full report to our insurance company, and we'll see what they say. But I don't have high hopes. Okay.
Okay.
All right. No other questions?
Thank you. All right, do I have a motion to approve the January 2024 Treasurers Report?
So moved.
Second.
It's been a motion by Dr. Shaw, second by Mr. Pease.
So we're in there.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, we're having a
Yeah, sorry.
conversation.
I'm trying
We're on the
to
meeting.
get them situated.
Yeah, let's
for the-
just take a seat for a second,
Okay.
we'll kind of get set here, and then, then we'll transition.
Okay, all right, so do you want me to do the roll call or no?
Yes,
Okay,
please.
roll call.
Navarro,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Tease,
Yes.
Shimon Rogers,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. All right, Superintendent report.
Okay, I am gonna transition, I know you're delighted by how interesting all the things are that I wrote here. We're gonna have our friends from WJE set up their equipment, and in the meantime, so just give me a second, I'm gonna disconnect from the screen so that they can set up. One of the things I wanna pass around, just for everyone, is I wanna make sure, it's been great having Janine Wheeler as acting Director of Public Relations. And I would really encourage you yourselves as board members to visit our website. It's very rich in information, rich in two short, video segments that have come out to really try to explain what you are trying to do as a board. Also, I just want to make sure that you have some of the materials that, for example, we had an outstanding visit to the Lamont Homer Glen Rotary Club today. It was exactly the kind of meeting that you want to have, where you're sitting around with community members who are informed, who are asking great questions, tough questions, have difference of opinion. There's that kind of, it seems almost old-fashioned now in the era of social media for people to sit around a table like this and really talk things out. So I want to make sure at the top of this that you see some of the materials tomorrow. I'll be at the Lockport Chamber of Commerce. And these are the materials that we'll leave with folks. It tries to line out for folks your decision-making in moving towards a renovation of Central, trying to get out after some of the major infrastructure pieces to avoid. There's a fairly dramatic picture that you're seeing right now. I really think at the bottom of, when we talk about in these sheets, preservation of a historic building, renovation is less costly than new construction, feasibility of building, and then unity, a site that's going to benefit every single porter. At the bottom line, you're going to see a fairly dramatic picture right now that is a major system of the building, and has caused a major disruption, a COVID-like disruption for our ninth graders. And I think you have pursued this path in order to avoid future interruptions. If electric, roof, HVAC would become inoperable, that would render the building uninhabitable, right? So I just wanted to be sure that you see kind of the things that we're communicating. one thing I think that's just important to answer a question that I saw on social media, all of these are produced in-house. You know, this is all work. Mr. Slager does this work, Mrs. Wheeler, Grace Gonzalez, our secretary, you know, all in-house work and really using our website just to be transparent and provide as much information as possible. I don't know, Mr. Sickbird or Mr. Thompson, I know you're available to weigh in as well. You know, Eric Sickbird from DLA Architects, Mr. Thompson, you know, a little downrange when you approve demolition of some of the ceilings, I do want to point out something that I think is valuable about having a relationship with someone like DLA who really knows the building. I think what it did is it brought those bids in for demolition much lower than you would have otherwise thought that they would be. But I really want to turn it over to these gentlemen who I got to know. I barely recognize in their civilian outfits, right? So I'm gonna allow you guys, you know, please introduce yourselves. You know, grateful for their work and take it away. I'm gonna pass around in paper form, I know it was on your agenda, the executive summary that WJE provided us.
Welcome, by the way. I just wanted
Yeah.
to say, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us. Good evening. My name is Kevin Collada. I'm an architect and structural engineer, principal with Wish Janney Elstner. My colleague here.
And my name is Richard Christie. I'm a structural engineer with Janney Elstner.
So, as you can see, the photograph that we've got behind us, and actually, do you need me to shift anyway? Can you see around me, or because I can stand next to it too, if that's helpful. Okay. We'll talk about the ceiling failure investigation and the assessment. I'll run through just a quick outline of what we'll talk about. Just a little bit of history and background. This may be, you know, old news as far as kind of the layout of the building, but I'm not sure just how familiar everyone is, so that when we're talking about spaces, we're all on the same page. We'll focus on the classroom 310 is where the failure occurred, and then the second part of the presentation will talk about the assessment and the remainder of the school. So the building itself was built in 1909, the original building. As you can see in the photograph down below, it's a Google Earth image. Along Jefferson Street, it's kind of in the foreground there, in the center portion, the red portion. It was added on to in 1929, so we've got the 20s edition up in the northern, what we'll call northern north is a little bit offset, but we'll say top of the screen is north for purposes of this presentation. And that had classroom areas, also had the gymnasium in that and the swimming pool. And then in the 50s, a couple of additions down at the south end that included also classrooms, some office space, cafeteria, auditorium, and then the library. So the place we've got highlighted here on the third floor, that's the location of the ceiling failure. That's classroom 310. That is in the 1929 edition, northwest corner of the building. The ceiling failure date was November 1st. And the approximate time is 10 p.m., and that was based on some motion sensors as well as security cameras within the corridor that picked up some movement, some dust coming up from below the door. No signs of failure or issues beforehand, discovered on November 2nd by staff in the morning. So these are some photos from November 2nd and 3rd is when we kind of got full into our investigation in earnest. Showing views with the ceiling within classroom 310. The first one on the left-hand side, that is showing there's still at that time, there was about 8 feet of ceiling that was still hanging at the west side or the exterior wall of the building. And then from there over, as you can see in that top center location, you could just see the remaining wood framing that was exposed where the rest of the plaster had come down. That center photo at the bottom, where you see kind of that clumpy stuff on the top is just blown in insulation that was on top of the plaster ceiling. As you look at that left photograph again, you can see kind of, does my mouse show it? Yeah, so you see these little lines here. This was a suspended ceiling grid that was there, and you can see it's got its own hangers. So some of that is still there, but for the most part that had all collapsed with the plaster ceiling. And one thing that we kind of we're kind of focusing in or honing in on as we were looking at this, at those blue arrows, those are 1x2 furring strips. So this is a acoustical ceiling that then had a plaster ceiling above it. The plaster is about a 1-inch nominal thick. It's got expanded metal lath in it. And then it was attached to these furring strips, which then were attached up to the wood structure itself. So the nails for that furring strip are what are holding the ceiling up in place, and those furring strips are about 16 inches on center, and the spacing of the joists are about 24 inches on center. So just kind of give you an idea of how we're hanging, or how the ceiling is hanging. So the cartoon kind of picture of the section through the classroom. This is as if we were looking north through the classroom. So on the left-hand side, this is our exterior wall here with the parapet and the roof area up here. And then on the right-hand side, this would be the wall to the corridor. So there would be a hallway over on the right-hand side. So as we're standing in the room, if you were to look up before any of the before the collapse, you would just see suspended ceiling tile here. This is the grid is independently supported up into the underside of the joist, and then we have the plaster ceiling here above that is held in by those furring strips that are then nailed into the underside of the joist. And so that's where I'm kind of showing with the blue arrow, and those are the 16 inches on center furring strips that are tied in. What I'm showing here in the upper right photograph is this is a nail hole. This is a hole where the nail had come out, it withdrawn, and part of the collapse, so it's no longer there. Then to the right of that, this is the suspended ceiling hanger. Some of those hangers did pull out when the plaster ceiling came down, and they pulled out and actually caused some splitting of those joists. In this particular location, just to show you what it was, you can see it was a lag bolt with a wire tie that was supporting that was still in place. And then the bottom photo, just to give you a better idea, that 1x2 member, that's the furring member. This is in that part of the ceiling that still had not collapsed over at the west end of the building, the classroom. So we looked at not only what was going on within the classroom itself, but we wanted to look and see, is there something going on at the roof structure? There's sags, is there something else? We looked at the wood members themselves, the structural members. There were some issues, but they were more localized. There was no fractures or things that would suggest that the structure itself had caused the collapse. And that was kind of similar to what we were finding on the roof. We had slope on the roof, but that was always intended in there for drainage. No kind of supplement, kind of sagging or other kind of problematic type conditions. We did note that within this area, this kind of northwest corner, there was only one roof drain, but there was no ponding there, was no cloggage. So again, we're looking for, is there kind of supplemental, there other kind of loads that might have been impacting. We also looked at the weather conditions. We went to NOAA and pulled up from the closest airport for Lewis Airport, and just to see whether or not was there any precipitation, any kind of large wind gusts, anything like that. Nothing that really stood out. It was some trace precipitation earlier in the day, none in the overnight hours, and the winds were pretty light and variable. I think there was some snow on the 31st of October, that was Halloween, but nothing of any kind of significance that would have been a kind of a design issue. When we were up on the roof, we did note in that top right photo, you can see kind of a newer white coating. This was some roof work that had happened in the roof area adjacent to where the classroom, not directly adjacent, but adjacent to that larger kind of roof area where the ceiling's construction was the same. And so we followed up on that just to understand what work had been done. Is it possible that they were storing any materials, things of that nature? It was all just a coating project that finished on the 23rd, 24th of October. The materials were hoisted up locally at the area where the roof repairs were done, and not transported across this area. Talking with staff, just say, hey, did you hear anything? Were there loud noises, anything? They didn't even know that, the teachers of this classroom didn't even know that work had happened. So again, no real signs that there would have been any kind of, anything out of the ordinary that would have been loading a roof area beyond where we were. And as I said, the interviews with the school, staff members who taught in the class, as well as teachers that identified the collapse failure, talking to them about had they seen anything, heard anything, any leaks, just anything out of the ordinary, nothing reported. So then our focus went back to look at, okay, we've got these furring strips, they pulled out, let's see what is the capacity of those furring strips, and what maybe that could tell us the story as to what's going on here. I've got two slides here. This one kind of just talks about the process. The next one has a few numbers, so if you don't like the numbers, you listen to this one. If you like the numbers, you can pay attention to the next slide. But as part of this, we want to know how much load is on those individual nails themselves. So we took a sample out as part of the demolition crew. We had them cut a section. We weighed that back. at our office, in our laboratory. We needed to know how much are these nails good for in withdrawal, and based on what they're attached to, what type of wood, the species of wood, it matters. So we took samples of the wood and we sent those off to a wood pathologist so that we could find out what exactly the wood that we were attached to. And then we wanted to look and say, okay, while the codes of today weren't there back then, where did this kind of fall within some of those parameters as far as the design and allowable capacities, as well as, because this is a failure, not only the allowable, which accounts for factors of safety, we also want to look at, and more importantly, we want to look at what's the ultimate capacity, what's the load that's going to put this over the top that could cause it to collapse. And so with that, wood's a very, wood is very variable. It's not as consistent as steel or something that. And so what I've got here on the top kind of graph is showing you that what we did is we looked at what the average ultimate strength of these nails were. But in wood design, the practice is to use the 5th percentile. What the 5th percentile is just telling you is that because there's so much variability, you start at an area at the 5th percentile so that 95% of the spread is going to be bigger. There's other safety factors and other things that have to still kind of go in, but as a starting point, that's where you can start design from. And so what we did is then we backed it off for the coefficients of variation, moisture exposure, even just humidity. If you think about in your own houses, if you've got wood doors or wood windows, summertime, they may stick a little bit more because of the swelling and then the shrinking. So if you're thinking about these nails in tension, kind of in withdrawal, just hanging there, and you're getting these swelling cycles over time, as well as just liquid moisture that could also affect it. And we saw some staining there. So over the past history of this, 90 plus years in this particular part of the building, there had been some moisture as well. And then the age of service, which is a term, cumulative damage, which is an industry accepted, that wood is certainly stronger in a near term and more of an impact. And once you get it for longer periods of time, you start to lose some capacity. So using all that, and I won't belabor all of this, but to show just some of the numbers, the load determination based on our tributary area, about 2.67 square feet, we got about 30 pounds per nails coming down. The allowable that we get based on Douglas fir, which was identified through the wood testing, is around 41 pounds per nail. But that only tells a little bit of the story. It tells us that, hey, by today's standards, if it was being designed, you'd say, yeah, we're okay. But when we dig a little deeper into it and look at what our average ultimate capacity is, get a very high number that then we have to back off. We have to back off to get down to that 5th percentile. And then we have to back off again using information from the wood handbook and other papers based on variability and variation in the industry that we were referencing. We start to break that number down further and further, and we start to get down to a range of around 16.5 to 48 pounds, which averages out to about 32. That's not even accounting for this cumulative effect of low duration. So it's very plausible that we're at or even lower. And that's not to say every, because again, we're talking the 5th percentile in that zone, and it's an estimate. So there's a lot of nails out there that are stronger than this, but there's also ones that are a little bit are on this or maybe even a little bit less. And it just takes, because we don't have a whole lot of redundancy in these furring strips being further apart, it just takes a little bit to kind of start to overload and get redistribution and then and cause failure. And so as we looked at not only the collapsed ceiling area within 310, but we looked at 312, which was the office right next door, and another classroom 304 across the hall. What we saw is, while we didn't see the damage or the deflections in the suspended ceiling itself, when we got above the ceiling, you start to see some of those same sags, or what we think is the same method that this failed. And this nail here in the bottom right corner was taken from one of those classrooms after they were demolished. And you can see how the shiny part of the nail, this nail is 2.5 inches long, and it's going through a 3/4 inch furring strip. It's a 1x2 nominal, but it's 3 1/4 inches thick. So it should be 1 3/4 inches in, and this was fully engaged in the furring strip, but only 3/4 of an inch was still grabbing it. So ultimately what I'm saying is, if you look at this picture here, is that the ceiling had started to deflect down, and some of the nails and the load just keeps redistributing until it can't hold anymore. And that just kind of brings us to our findings, is that the original withdrawal capacity based on today's standards would have been adequate, and it got 90 plus years of service out of it. But the nail withdrawal capacity was reduced from moisture as well as from age. Flexibility, we won't get too much into it, but there is some flexibility just with the wood framing itself. We did some limited analysis there. We could also have some potential of impact on the nail performance as well. And then we think the failure had been going on for an extended period of time based on all the information we saw as well as those other classrooms. And then finally, consistent with what staff had said and the teachers in the room, the indications of this distress would have been pretty much hidden from view unless someone was above the ceiling. Recommendations, demolish 310 ceiling, which has already been accomplished. Demolish similarly constructed areas of the ceiling. Some of that's already been done. The other ceilings that were showing sag and were of greater danger in 304, 312, and 306 as well have been taken down. There are a few other areas that we would still recommend come down. We're saying that additional study needs to be done for the structure above, especially with new ceilings or anything that go in, different loadings. We're recommending a drainage study of the roof, whether or not a supplemental or additional drain, just in case one gets clogged so we don't get an overload and potentially have a problem related to that. And then because the plaster serves a purpose from a fire separation standpoint, we're also recommending that be reviewed and then maintained with the new ceiling system, whatever that may be. And our understanding is DLA has been working on that as well as with some partners for the structural assessment. All right, this is kind of like part one of the report, and then part two is next. Any questions so far?
Is Douglas fir typically a good quality wood?
It's
Yes.
one of the two premier
There you go, Rick.
structural lumbers.
What is the other one?
Southern pine. So we get Douglas fir from the west, we get southern pine from the south, and that's pretty much the premier lumbers. We also get a lot of lumber from Canada, spruce pine fir, which is a lot of homes are built with. But those are the two strongest lumbers.
Yeah, the species was good. In reviewing the framing members themselves, a decent number of knots checks, other kind of natural defects. So a lot of times when we're looking at some of these older, you think, oh, these old growth wood, a lot of pristine wood, and not quite as much in what we saw, at least locally within the 310. So based on that, we were asked by the district to expand our review to look at the remainder of the school. Not that we were going to be looking at every single inch, but to do a fairly well review of every room, every area, basically, to identify, do we have other kind of problematic conditions? Is there any other, ceiling in danger of coming down? And to be able to then come through with recommendations for addressing that. So before we started with that, sampling was done for asbestos. That was done by ESI. That was worked out through the school. They had worked with ESI before. Again, we didn't want to make openings in the ceilings and start creating different kind of hazards and dust and other things. But those all came back negative, which was nice. Visual observations were done throughout. Select sounding of the plaster ceilings present, review of inspection openings, and then some limited analysis of the connections were done. There were 14, I'll call them main ceiling types in the school building. There are several more kind of subtypes, but a lot of different variation across the building and in different areas. And I'll show you some of the color-coded floor plans that kind of highlight that and show it. But we had the plaster on expanded metal lath with the furring, which is like what we saw at 310. We had it without furring. We had different types of rib lath, which is often used for ceiling, some in the 1920s and some in the 1950s. Wood lath plaster, that was basically in the original 1909 building. Direct applied. Gypsum wallboard was used as replacement in some of the areas. Cement board panel, that was in the gymnasium. They're kind of acoustical, different. We have combination ceilings listed there too. This building from 1909, the combination ceilings had several different renovations worth. It's almost like you're peeling the layers of the onion, where you have the suspended tile, but then you have maybe a different furred out ceiling, a gypsum panel-based ceiling. There was some tin ceilings still present, as well as plaster. And so those become a little bit more difficult as far as assessing because of the load pass not being able to be fully established. And so when you see any kind of issues with those became something that we kind of honed in And then there are a couple other areas of where there's the decorative inlay that's over outside the gymnasium, and as well as some exposed structure. And those are nice because there's no ceiling to deal with. So I've got plans of each of them. I won't dwell too much, but just to show you each of the 14 ceiling types. Type 1 is the ceiling type that had collapsed. That's the wood, the plaster ceiling on the wood furring, and some of the other ones I'll kind of highlight as we go through. So as we go on to the first floor plan, type 2, this is a rib lath in the 1920s. This rib lath has got a much tighter, and I've got some photos to show, but it's got a little bit tighter rib spacing, and that became a little bit problematic. And in order for the plaster to work, it has to key into that lath and kind of grab that. And because of the spacings on that made that a little bit, if you recall some of the things that we sent out before, there were different risk categories. We've kind of taken that into ceilings, and then we have repairs, but it all kind of assesses and includes that risk. There have been some changes in some of the things that we've looked at because this was a process. We had 379 rooms that we looked at, and some of them we did not know fully at the time, but we made different inspection openings, got different access, we gained more information, and then we kept refining as we went. So second floor plan, again, you got that 1920s lath, and then down in the areas in the type 6, that's a direct applied, so kind of more the brown. That's located in a little bit of the different, each of the different zones. As we go over to the third floor plan, remember our classroom here, classroom 310, that's where the collapse happened. So you can see that particular type 1 is just local to this area, and that's a good thing because that's not a system that we have a whole lot of faith in. But it did not continue into other locations. And then we have kind of a jumble at some of the fourth floor, and some of this is based on past water damage or things where areas have been replaced and don't match what the original ceilings were. So we have tons and tons of photos. We'll just kind of show a few representative ones, but we had all sorts here. A lot of areas where the plaster ceiling was in good shape, no visible distress, no differential deflections, no cracking or maybe minuscule hairline cracking, which could be expected in a cementitious type product. But then we also had areas of plaster cracking, and most of these ones that are more prominent as far as damage are again located above suspended ceilings, not just walking into the classroom seeing this. You have to kind of look for these and find these areas. But we've got some larger cracks, and then this one we've got a crack as well as some differential movement. You can see similar kind of a differential movement in these tiles here in the bottom left. Center bottom is a moisture damaged area that was along an exterior wall, and then in the bottom right corner is a gypsum ceiling that was in good shape. It had been replaced a prior ceiling. We also got up into the attic spaces, and I said we made 19 inspection openings. So again, we're looking at to see, we've got plaster, how's that attached? Is that attached to the structure well? We had some areas where we had individual ceiling hangers where there was something attached to an electrical conduit, which no. But in general terms, we found that we had pretty good attachment of the ceilings, and you can see here this has got the rib lath in the 1950s. That's going to a steel channel, then that's brought back up to the structure. Here's that 1920s lath that I was talking about, where we've got a tighter spacing in the bottom corner here. It kind of shows that tighter void, kind of the expanded lath behind the rib, between the ribs. And so when that gets lapped over, there's almost no spot for that plaster to push up and key into it. And so that became a little bit of an area where that came concern. We did find some areas that were debonded. We also found some areas where there was some corrosion, and it wasn't like what we were talking about in the type 1 ceilings where it was a full-blown collapse, but these are local kind of issues. So based off all of that, we came up with different risk ratings based on the different types of ceilings that we had, and just to kind of show you, where we kind of fell with this. The low risk, where we don't have ceilings or where we have ceilings that have been replaced and are in good condition. Slight risk is most of the ceilings is most of the ceilings in and of themselves are not risky. It's more or less where there may have been some damage or distress that's occurring that makes them a little bit more risky. Medium risk, we put the direct applied plaster, which in of itself typically isn't that risky either, but based on the amount of sounding and things that we did as far as delaminations and other distress that we saw, we put that into a more medium category. Medium high That's the 1920s metal lath, as well as those combination ceilings that we talked about. And then the high being the type 1 ceiling where we had the collapse. So that breaks down, if you like the numbers, it breaks down by different recommendations where we said, okay, R1 is a worst case, demolish, take those out of service. That would be the type 1 type ceilings, right? And R2 is you've got a lot of different repairs that need to be done and stabilization. It may be worth considering from a cost standpoint or from what future plans, it may be worth considering taking that out of service. R3 is more, hey, you've got some local issue here. You may have a hanger issue. You may have a little leak issue or past leakage issue that needs to be addressed. And R4 is nothing to take care of at this particular time. In talking with the district and just kind of, as we were kind of understanding where kind of the intent was as far as, recommendations, certainly the type 1 needed to go. The type 2, can we look at different ways to try to fix that lath? It's a brittle system. Said, no, it makes more sense just to take that out of service. So that became out of service. The type 5, the combination where we've got crazy load pass and also some distress showing, that is recommended for taking out of service. As well as type 3, we've got multiple options here, and that's type 3 is the wood lath plaster, and that's in the 1909. Only where we have significant distress from a moisture issue or other kind of movement issues. So we have some local areas, local rooms, as well as type 13. That's another plaster lath system where we had some damage. We were recommending locally the removal. And then these plans, again, all of this will be provided in our final report, but the plan's just showing where the areas that the repairs or the replacements are being recommended. Not a whole lot of work down in the lower level, a little bit of sounding work that needs to be done for checking for delaminations. Similarly, there's some delamination of the cyan blue areas there, some hangers that need to be addressed. But the more higher risk category items being that 1929 lath, that included areas above the swimming pool, in the wrestling room, corridors, and then interesting enough, that 1929 lath actually made its way into the 1909 building, probably done as part of that work as they did some past renovation or repairs. Speculation on my part, but it would seem to make sense. Again, the 1929 area being a lot of the areas because of the that rib lath. In the 1909 area, here we've got the combination ceilings, and then we've got a smattering of the type 3 wood lath ones where we have some damage. And then as we get up onto the third floor, the recommendations, as I said before, some of these have already been addressed and taken out of service, but then we have some other areas here with the 1929 lath as well, and then a couple other combination ceilings lower into the 1909 area. So with that, those are the recommendations, and it's all broken out room by room as far as in the final report. But some of just the additional considerations and recommendations, we're just recommending that these repairs be implemented prior to the resumption of the school activities. Similar to what we talked about at the first part of the presentation. Fire protection, anytime a ceiling that comes out, especially as plaster ceiling, if it's providing some sort of a separation, and especially as we're talking about the old wood structure, that needs to be looked at from a fire protection standpoint. Structural review for these areas as well, in areas where if there's moisture damage and a ceiling comes down, those areas of the structure should be inspected for damage. And then just as an ongoing recommendation to conduct annual maintenance program to review the ceiling areas and any locations of active leakage, because those obviously can cause issues.
You said there are areas where there's active leakage?
There was, during our investigation, there was one active leak, and it was reported that has been addressed. That leak was located at the end of the corridor. In this, if you can see my mouse, it was over in this zone right over here. So it was in
the second floor?
I'm sorry. Here, right at here, third floor.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's maybe quarter 331.
Interesting. So, first off, thank you for coming. I think that this is the report that we've been waiting for a long time, and I think it allowed us to breathe a little bit. So just so I am understanding, and for the people at home watching, the people in the audience that are here, what I just want to reiterate something that I think I heard you say. So, in order to identify the fact that this could have potentially happened, we would have had to do some sort of investigation like you've done in the past 3-4 months, correct?
Yeah, it wasn't just blatantly visible or obvious that
And
there was something
that was going to lead into my second question. So there was no obvious indication in any of these rooms that would have been visible to the eye that indicated that these red zones were there and that they needed to be repaired? Because I know we've been getting a lot of questions as to, why maintenance hasn't done anything, but there was no indication from your investigation that this would have been seen.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that, were there some stained ceiling tiles here and there? Yes. Was there indication that a ceiling was, imminently, ready to come down or collapse? Or even some of these, when I go back, and one thing I just want to make sure that's clear, when we have this R1 and we've got 94 rooms upstairs, it's not because 94 rooms are ready to come down. There were a handful that were ready to come down, those type 1s. The other ones are, there's a risk there that, based on what's happened, and completely understandably so, and the inability to kind of be able to repair those effectively, the decision is those are priority 1. It makes sense to take those down.
Yeah, and that's not to say that water staining doesn't happen. I mean, working in a school, we see water stains in ceiling tiles all the time. It could be condensation from a pipe. It could be a variety of things that are in the building, but significant water damage there was nothing visible that would have indicated this.
Above ceiling, there were signs of past, but those were dry when we were there, so not active.
But not something that we would have seen with the naked eye or without doing an investigation, such as cutting into the ceiling.
Well, cutting into the ceiling in some areas, other areas it's above acoustical tiles.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
And one thing I would share with the board, this is a good time for your questions or confirmations. I think, I hope people in the public, people on live stream can see extremely thorough. And, to be thorough, you've really chosen as a board to be thorough rather than quick. And this kind of work, that Rich and Kevin and all their associates, they had many, many people working in the building. Like I said, I probably recognize their legs hanging out of the ceiling more than the rest of them. Frequently, that was, something I saw. To be thorough takes time, in a construction project. These are not the kind of things to be thorough, to be safe, to be thoughtful. It just doesn't happen overnight. I appreciate, just imagine 379 rooms. WJE's work is still on display. We've had almost 700 people through Central, and people immediately, notice the holes in the ceiling, right? So it speaks to, just the thoroughness with which they did their work. And I think, helpful, we're already kind of engaged in a construction project. That passes over to to DLA to use, the findings from WJE, ASAP, I guess I would say, But those findings are very, very important in terms of guiding the next steps that we'll do on the ceiling. Questions? Things that are on your mind? Anything for Rich and for Kevin?
You're very informative. Thank you.
So I appreciate their professionalism and their depth, and just their really hard work and the ability of DLA to suggest to us right away. I think Rich and Kevin were on site Monday, November 6th. Just a mere few days after we had this year. The 3rd. You were on the 3rd.
Yeah, we had
on
someone,
Saturday.
We
right?
had someone here on the 2nd. And he kind of took reconnaissance,
Right.
and then we were here. Yeah, Friday, Saturday.
Right, because I remember that Saturday morning. I was kind of having coffee with you guys. So.
One question I would ask is, from a structural standpoint, as you were investigating the areas above the ceilings, were there any noticeable structural issues, not related particular to the ceilings, but things that, had the ceilings not been there, you would notice some sort of structural deficiencies that should either be taken care of as a part of this process, or the school was in great shape and there was really no need for adjustments in that area?
There were a couple of items. It was not our focus to get to that level, but there were a couple items. There was a spike knot fracture on a wood joist in the corridor where we documented that. We put it in the report to say, hey, this needs to be taken care of and addressed. There were some cracks or separations that align with walls that also extended into some of the ceilings above the suspended ceilings in some of the precast planked areas in the 1950s that we said, hey, so we kind of, even though we didn't go into the depth of going there, we said, whether it's us or whether it's someone, there needs to be another step, and that's in the recommendation. So there are a few of those items in there for sure.
And that's a part of the work, when the ceilings come down, they're gonna review that.
Right.
Just to take a look.
And that's another step,
Right.
right, to kind of, to answer your question, Lance, is when we do all the demolitions, you'll see the bid, tonight, recommended for approval, we'll take a pause between demolition and reconstruction to have Pease and Borst take a look up in there for an expanded view of what Kevin's talking about, right? You'll have a hole, and I think some of you have seen those ceilings removed. You'll have that whole ceiling open to you, so that can be incorporated in the reconstruction.
Right.
That's I think a good step to take. It's probably gonna cause us maybe a 3-week pause for Pease and Borst to do that work in those spots and rank that up, but I think that's part of being thorough, and really also comes from what these gentlemen have recommended.
But I think it's good that, at least on visual inspection, there wasn't significant deficiencies that, we're not gonna expect the structural engineer to come back and all of a sudden, oh yeah, every piece of wood is delaminating, or it's got something, got an issue with it that would cause a larger problem. So I appreciate at least the initial visual inspections on that so that we can continue that work.
I am curious, did you guys find anything else interesting? Like, nobody's seen some of this stuff for 95 years. Did you just any stories or interesting?
There's an old skylight that's been in the third floor corridor that has been roofed over. I think
skylight?
Maintenance
Very
knew about that.
decorative
Yeah, but there's a
skylight.
Really?
Yeah, that was interesting.
Where is
I wasn't
that?
expecting that. It was in the 1909 building in the corridor.
Third floor view.
So the skylight is just sealed off?
Yeah, you wouldn't know it from the roof because it's been roofed over, and from underneath the ceiling, you have a suspended ceiling, but as you're up in there through the framing, you can see there's a skylight. That was, I guess, interesting.
Huh. I wonder why they got rid of that.
For safety reasons, who knows?
Probably.
That and a few, cans of whatever. That's
Beverages, yeah.
Yeah, how
beverages,
one never
cans.
knows, right?
You actually, wait, you found some from like the 1920s?
Not from that old, no.
Oh.
But there's the stands for the balcony of the gymnasium. Looks like the kids like to stick their garbage through those little vents that are underneath the underneath the seats. That's where we learned I was a big garbage collector.
Really? So they just stuck you found some interesting beverages, huh?
Well, that wasn't the same location. That was just another finding. But
Ah.
yeah.
See, that's really interesting. For 95 years. I guess.
Well, thanks a ton. I've got a second part of this report. We'll go a little bit quicker, but thanks for your thoroughness and all
Thank
your
you.
really hard work. Really appreciate you guys. I'm gonna have Stephanie Croy. I'm gonna sort of reconnect myself. And Dr. Carrie Green is had to head home this evening, so I'm gonna kind of take her spot. Do you mind if I just kind of get this, back up on the view board here, a little tech changeover? Okay, Rich, thanks so much. Cheers.
Thank you.
Hey, Kevin.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cheers. Yeah, I'm gonna just reconnect here. We'll kind of jump into a very quick second part of, I don't know why that's doing that. Just a really quick second, if, Ms. Croy, if you could join us, just an update on life at North. And really quickly, just some recent developments in terms of just how we're working out cost. You've got that executive summary, but just want to have Mrs. Croy jump in. If I take the Dr. Carrie Green part this evening, I think, life at North, there's pluses and there's minuses. We have terrific hosts. We have incredible partnership. That partnership has worked out very, very well at Lincoln Way North. For example, we partnered with Dr. Scott Tingley, his staff, Will County Sheriff, Lockport Police, Dr. Green's staff. We had the Park District in Frankfurt operating, and we really just needed to find a way to shut the Park District off with adults that we don't know, we're not screening from the school as a safety matter, with a modicum of inconvenience to those Park District patrons. Came up with a creative solution. That's all sealed off. Park District patrons can't get into the main school building during school hours, right? That's proper security. So we continue to have that. When I'm at North, kids are taking advantage of the building, taking advantage of the space. But two things that we haven't been able to overcome are one, busing, and then two, a shorter school day. Can we get 8 more minutes? If we can just get 8 more minutes, that would be meaningful, because class periods would come up to a total of 40 minutes. That's a little bit about life at North, just great partnership and working out. What I would say on the heels of, just pivoting towards the referendum is I think the idea is if you can be preventative, if you can get at some of these major issues, can you avoid another scenario with heating, cooling, electric, roof, that you might, have a situation where you have, almost 1,000 students and their teachers without a facility. I think that's really what this is all about, and the cost thereof. But speaking of cost, Mrs. Croy just had maybe a quick summary of just what are things costing, the work you did with Mr. Duback over at Lincoln Way Central, Lincoln Way, your counterpart.
Mr. Duback and I had a conversation, virtual meeting, about reconciling the actual costs that were incurred November, December, January, increased costs for Lincoln Way North, right, for our presence there. And that's per the intergovernmental agreement, that we would review and reconcile those actual costs to what we estimated originally, which is what rent was based on, right? So the intergovernmental agreement originally said that rent for the first 3 months was $250,000 per month, and that was based on splitting the initial cleaning costs over the 3 months, as well as adding in what the expected operational costs, mostly utilities, would be. So the good news is, in that reconciliation, while the cleaning costs came in a little higher, the utility costs came in lower. And so that actually resulted, after we looked at that reconciliation, in a credit back to us, to Lockport, of $49,000, $49,893. So just to clarify, all of the things that are included in that cost reconciliation are listed here for the board. It's all the utilities: electricity, gas, water, sewer, waste removal, recycling, internet, and telephone. There were also some repairs and consumable supplies. So as we're operating there, our maintenance staff's doing some things and replacing some pieces, and their staff is doing some things as well. So there's, between technology and maintenance and custodial, right, there's some kind of sharing of taking care of that. So there were some things incurred on both sides there. And so the net effect of us occupying that space is Lincoln Way just wants to break even, basically, right? They're not really charging us to make income or to make, so all that being said, that means what the board saw in the treasurer's report is a payment for the month of, we did November, January, for February, that was a little over $50,000 because we took that credit. And then the current treasurer's report also included the rent for the next month. And that's now averaging about $100,000. So for the next few months, we'll be paying $100,000 a month, and Mike and I agreed to reconcile again after spring break to see if there were any other changes, and if that results in more credit back to us, great. If it results in us owing a little bit more, we'll reconcile that as well. But with the weather so nice, maybe it will be in our favor. We'll see, right? Are there any questions about that and how that cost reconciliation is working?
So our total estimated cost of occupying over over 7 months, you know, as you see up there, it's about $1 million.
Mhm.
Is what just the occupying, using Lincoln Way North, we believe will cost the district.
Right. One of the line items that will be amended in the budget.
In the updated.
Yeah.
And where would that be? What fund?
Operations and maintenance, because it's
Operations and
renting a
maintenance.
facility. Yes. And actually, not that I'm asking you to go back, but if you do take a look back at the treasurer's report, the financial reports, if you look at the expenditure report, if you look down the column that shows the comparison budget to actual, the only line item that is over budget right now is purchase services for the operations and maintenance fund, and that is where rental cost goes. So once the budget's amended, it won't be over budget anymore. But any other questions on the costs?
That, my friends, is my superintendent's report for this evening. So, thank you, Mrs. Joy. We will kind of move at pace. We know you also have a closed session this evening. So mainly looking for some of these traditional reports we do, just your questions.
Dr. Green and I are going to talk briefly to you about a report that I attached with the Equal Opportunity Schools. EOS does a nice job of taking all that survey data and then providing us with some reports. If you click on the report, oh my gosh, it's a lot right there. So I wasn't going to go over it all anyway. I don't even know if you want to click on it, Dr. McBride, but I was just going to talk about report number, the first page of the report. They talk about the demographics of survey respondents. And so one of the nice things is when we get these reports, we go over with our consultant, LaShawn Johnson, because she's got a pulse on all of the schools that are doing EOS, and then can talk about like how our school is in comparison. And she really brings out some things that we might not know. And so the first one just tells us who are the students who took the report, or the students and the staff. And one of the things she said here was we had an awesome response, right? So kudos to John and to Carrie and the work they did to get students and staff to take the survey that's going to yield about important information. The number one, next, page 2, this is about students' college and career aspirations. And so I would just highlight here that 88% of our students want to go to college, whether it's 2-year, 4-year, or something advanced. And that's higher than what EOS sees on average in their other schools by about 4%. And over in the side over here, I think one of the things that I love is this last statement here. It says, I want to learn things that help me make a positive impact on the world. And our students responded, 82% said that's what they want, as compared to in the EOS portfolio, 76%. So that says to me our community is doing something great with our students. And then just scrolling up, here's a Wordle of the things our students want to do, and we can have good conversations about this. You can see the biggest thing there is professional sports. And gee, are we letting our students know the challenges that presents and helping them come up with a backup plan? I love that you see undecided, because we're using school links trying to help our students decide on that. And one other one I would point out is environmental science is on there pretty bold. And if you remember, we offered environmental science for the first time this year as a dual credit course. So just some more things we can learn.
Surprised nobody said YouTuber or influencer in there, at least not that I can see.
It must not have been one that a lot of students said. I'm going to skip over the third one right now because, well, time, and I know you guys have still things to do, but I wanted to jump to report number 7, or page number 7 of this report. And on there, this is where they really talk to, we know our students want to go to college. It said that on the front end. And we know one of the ways that students can really be prepared for college is taking that AP class. It can also yield them college credit. So on the bottom part of this, It really honed in on our 11th and 12th grade students who are from historically underrepresented students of color or low-income students. And what they said was a reason they weren't taking AP classes. And you can see over there on the end, the biggest barrier was adult encouragement. They felt like the adults weren't giving them encouragement. So that's why Dr. Greenan's up here with me, because he did work with the equity committee and is leader in this campus to do some work on that.
Yeah, so I would just ask you to reflect a little bit on the position that you're in and think about why you are here or the particular job that you have. And I would think that at some point you had someone who encouraged you along the way to do that. Of course, you have to put the work in as an individual, but it certainly helps to have that encouragement. I know I can think of several people in my life who've helped me along the way. So what Dr. Cristofero is pointing out is one strategy that we are trying to encourage all of our students to feel like they belong. Because when you have that person in your life that gives you that encouragement to make you feel like you are a part of something, that's powerful stuff. So that's what we're trying to do. And the latest work of our equity team is we had 5 volunteers with the help of Mr. Slager, who's currently in the production of the video, to do a trusted adult training video, actually. And one of the several powerful aspects of the survey results that we received were students who identified trusted adults here at LTHS. Someone who has encouraged them, who has made them feel like they belong. And we feel like that is a powerful tool to use in the course selection process, as our counselors are going through right now with our students, but then even next year when we have a lot of students who for the first time will be leveling up. And I think it's pretty powerful that Dr. McBride pointed out, we had over 300 staff members that were identified as a trusted adult. Like that's awesome stuff to hear about. So we want to utilize our staff to help our counselors, perhaps in the course selection process, to have some encouraging conversations, maybe to clarify some things. So number one, we think it's important also for the staff members to know this, to know that like someone has said that you have made a difference in my life. That's powerful. That's a reminder of why we got into education, I believe. So we certainly want to do it for our students, but we want to do it for our staff too, because that's a really powerful thing. So we're currently working on this video that every staff member who's been identified as a trusted adult receives that video to remind them about what our work is about with EOS, to also know that we might be tapping them on the shoulder to help with the student, whether that be in the course selection process or, like I said, when they're taking that course next year or a year beyond. There might be someone that we can confide in to help that student if they're having a particular issue or maybe need that little extra encouragement.
So I know there could be tons of questions about the EOS report, but you can ask them now, but I'll be back next month and we'll look at a different portion of this same report, so you'll see it linked in. All right, then I just wanted to take one more minute to talk about our upcoming Dominican Republic trip, service trip, the first trip that the board approved and supported. And so I gave you some information. Again, March 22nd to March 30th, we have a group of 23 students and 3 adults who will be traveling to the Dominican Republic. They'll be learning about the culture, but they will also be engaged in service for that community. I learned our students are excited, you can imagine, and they did 9 fundraisers this year to help support the trip, including something like a pickleball tournament. So really creative ideas by the sponsor, Ms. Quintanar. Also, I would just let you know that School District 112 in Highland Park, they just got back from their second time of sponsoring students to go on the same trip that our students are on, and just raved about it. So, and then lastly, our curriculum committee people, we hope to have some students who go on the trip at our April 8th meeting to share out with you. All right, thanks.
Thank you. I'm not sure you should go anywhere.
I'm next.
Yes.
So if you had the opportunity to look at the principal's report, once again, you see just continued awesome success in the areas of activities and athletics. And in fact, we'll have several resolutions next month of both success in the activity area and the athletic arena as well. One thing I do want to highlight for my report for this month, and it's not mentioned in the activity section, but it has been mentioned by a few people here today at the board meeting. So I'm sorry if this might sound a little repetitive, but I have to really highlight our twerp dance. As I was here Saturday night, interacting with our staff, interacting with our students, on stage, giving my safety announcement to the students, it really did give me an opportunity to reflect on, particularly the last 5 years, the things that we have added for safety reasons for our students and staff at our dances. You know, think about the metal detectors that we have. I do go up on stage at the very beginning of the dance to let all the students know that all of our staff members and police officers that work wear a glow stick so that they can be more recognizable if they need to if they have a question or they have a concern. I point out the exits and entrances, and also say that if there's a time at the dance where perhaps we need to communicate with you, I will come back up on the stage, we'll turn the lights on, and I will communicate with you. And though it's probably the one part of the dance that the students don't like is when I'm up there on stage and they're all ready to get going, and then the lights come on and then they give me the microphone. And I'm pretty brief, right, Tori? Okay. But I think that's important because it really has added, as I've talked to some students and gotten some feedback from parents on this, it's given students and I think staff as well some reassurance of coming to such a large event. You're thinking back to homecoming, we had 2,700 kids here. Just found out here at TWRP over the weekend, we had about 1,300 students here. Large numbers of students having a really good time at the dance. But I'm also proud of what we've put in place procedurally to manage the events that we have, discussing our dances back, both homecoming and TWRP. And as Ms. Kishline had pointed out, these events would not take place if it wasn't for the great work of our staff. So of course I have to thank all of our staff who every event that we have. But I also really need to thank our students because, again, as I've reflected more on Saturday and then thinking back on homecoming in the last few years, the behavior of our students is exceptional. And I'm really proud of how our students, not only as they come here to have a good time, to be social, to enjoy each other's presence, their behavior at the dance is also something to be very, very proud of. And again, if you just take a step back and just think about the amount of students that we have, and we know that sometimes students make poor choices, sometimes adults make poor choices too, and we address that if that happens. But to think about the amount of students that we have and to relatively have no issues and to have a really fun evening, it really reiterates what Carrie Green and I always really talk about with our students is that involvement piece. And not to say that going to a dance is like the be-all, end-all thing, but as we have seen here at Lockport, and thank you for your support and supporting us to have these events, our dances are very well attended and are enjoyable. So I just wanted to bring that up, especially knowing that a few others brought up TWRP. I just wanted to give those remarks again in appreciation of you, the board, who allow us to do this, our staff, who work so hard to pull it off, and then our students for really their great behavior and presence. Any questions on anything that was within the report for this month? Thank you.
Information report, as always, sometimes we keep ahead of these, but we want to make sure that you know them. We did have our cheer team go to the IHSA state tournament overnight, headed down there by coach bus. We also had, just this past weekend, 2 weekends, sectionals for wrestling. What I consider also the best dressed coach at the state tournament. Did you know that in wrestling that is actually a category? They anoint the best dressed wrestling coach. Through down at state. We will in March have students going down to Skills USA, an incredible competition. That's 6 students who are all part of the governing body of Skills USA. So some really great stuff. And then, our customary report, maintenance, just, I don't know if there are any questions for Mr. Thompson or myself. The work doesn't stop. Maintenance work is ongoing. One of the toughest, oftentimes in a budget, you can find kind of the large capital projects, but sort of all of the things really that happen at both of our buildings that are the fixes, the adjustments, the coils that are replaced, the hallways, the lockers that are repaired. And this report, I think, really captures that every single month. So I don't know if there are any questions. Probably the most important thing here is that we've sent out, Mr. Thompson's been hard at work, requests for qualifications for construction management companies. Construction management managers come alongside any kind of big project. We're anticipating where this might go, the referendum might go, or your decisions if that referendum is not approved by the voters. But a construction manager comes along, and really the cost of a project like a renovation is dictated by construction companies. Our friends, at DLA, WJE can give cost opinions, but bringing in a construction manager as a service assists with real cost opinions from the construction side of things. Not only cost opinions, but project opinions. How long will things take? So we're in that process of requesting qualifications from qualified construction managers. Any questions for me or Mr. Thompson about what we've been getting up into? All right. Over to you, Mrs.
All right.
Geneva.
Okay, moving on to our consent agenda items. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items number 2 through 8?
So moved. Second.
It's been motioned by Dr. Shaw and second by Dr. Shimon Rogers. Are there any questions?
Should I abstain for this since I wasn't part of it being put on the consent agenda?
You do not need to abstain from this because these are, you're here right now, right? So you have access to the agenda. It's a really good question, so you can vote on it. Or if you feel that, this wasn't billed. I think you're in the same place with most, board members. They're seeing these are routine, regular items, so.
Okay.
It's only the minutes,
All right. Okay, roll call.
Shimon Rogers,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Navarro,
Yes.
Pease,
Yes.
Johnson,
yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. Now we move into our action consideration. Do I have a motion to approve the waiver for the 2024-2025 to include 2 school improvement days?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Shimon Rogers and second by Mr. Travis. Are there any questions? And hearing none, roll call.
Pease,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Navarro,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Shimon Rogers.
Yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. All right, do I have a motion to approve the 2024-2025 school calendar as presented?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned by Dr. Shaw and second by Mr. Travis. Are there any questions? And hearing none, roll call.
Johnson,
Yes.
Navarro,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Pease,
Yes.
Shimon Rogers,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. All right, do I have a motion to approve the bus bid for the 6 new school buses for the 2024-2025 school year?
So moved.
It's been motioned by Mr. Dees and second by Dr. Shimon Rogers. Any questions? Hearing none, roll call.
Travis,
Yes.
Shimon Rogers,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Pease,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Navarro,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. All right, do I have a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the filing of assessment complaints and appeals? I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's been motion by Ms. Lopez Caniva and second by Dr. Shaw. Are there any questions to that? Hearing none, roll call.
Shaw,
Yes.
Pease,
Yes.
Navarro,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Shimon Rogers,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. All right, do I have a motion to approve the ceiling removal project at Central Campus?
So moved.
Second.
It's been motion by Dr. Shaw, second by Mr. Dees. Roll call.
Rivera,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
Shimon Rogers,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. Moving on, then policy updates.
Right, we put this off as long as we could, board members, but yes, this is Press 113, and just for all the board members and for the public, Press is a service that we subscribe to through the Illinois Association of School Boards. It links everything that the legislator decides into policy for us. Then we come with a first reading, there's no approval tonight. What our team does and works with Mrs. Maxwell, does a great job. In the first round, we present to you all of those policies that you saw attached, the changes. Changes are, in many ways in this group, very minimal, and we kind of do a first reading to walk you through what the changes are, to give you a flavor, kind of get it down to the essence. When there's any kind of wording in the policy that's changed, sometimes it can be a word. It does require board approval for adoption. If the footnotes, if the legal references are changed, it does not require board approval. So I'll walk through the policies tonight. Please, just if there's something that you don't understand, stop me for brevity's sake because you have closed session. I'll move at pace. Policy 2:20, all the 2 section is the board. Basically, this changes. This was a state law that changed the bidding threshold, mainly for construction projects, from $25,000 to $35,000. Raised that, so we come in alongside that change. Policy 2:120. This is for you, and this will actually directly impact you when you adopt it. It will require us to provide you with trauma-informed professional development. That's something that all of us as licensed professional educators now have to be trained in, and what are sort of the adverse, critical, childhood experiences that children can suffer, that they can bring with themselves to school.
So how would we go about doing that? Would we have to take
we'll search out, a training for all of you, and we'll decide in the upcoming year.
Is this a one-day training, or is this like a weekend training?
Most of it would be usually about a 3-hour training, and how we'll do that and when we'll do that. You might want to do it in person. There's lots of folks who do ACES training. So I think we'll have to have a conversation with you about, do you want to do it as a workshop together? Do you want to do it online?
Let's do it together.
So there'll be plenty of time to talk about the format. Policy 2:200, types of board meetings. This adds, I think, an important factor to your closed session. There are previously 16 reasons why you can have closed session. This adds another one, and that is if you want to discuss as a board in private, in closed session, a member that you want to bar from campus. In essence, if you want to have a no trespass letter presented to any person for any reason that is a safety reason, a violation of board policy, of conduct policy, you can discuss that amongst yourselves in closed session. So it adds that. Board meeting procedure. This allows a board member, it expands the reasons why board members can attend if they are away on business. Board members can attend remotely if they're sick. This adds if they're attending a funeral or other medical reason. This also adds if a board member has childcare obligations that they can't provide, coverage for. A board member can attend remotely. Business and financial operations, 4:10. This requires the district to annually present to you prior to the levy a written report that includes the annual average expenditures in our operational fund. So what is the operational fund for the past 3 years? Just how is that fund performing? How is that fund being used over the past 3 years? Purchases and contracts. This allows for design build. This is a new approach in the state of Illinois. It was piloted. We've seen some schools that have done design build. You might say, Dr. McBride, what is design build? Design build is when the architecture company is also the construction company. So it permits both of those services together. So there are a number of companies that are now specializing in this, that they do both. They do your architecture, they also do your construction for you. It's the same company. That's design build. 4:130 is a free and reduced price food for program, price food services, this policy. Just, it's updated. We don't participate in this program, but we do have policy update, that language if we did participate in the program, and there's an update of legal references. This is just environmental quality. This kind of brings us into compliance with pesticide application at schools and coal tar sealant disclosure act. This basically requires us, when we're doing pesticides, if there's coal tar sealant, we're using that, we have to inform the community that we're doing it and using it. 4:30, this policy was updated to clarify what type of U.S. corporate obligations are authorized investments for you. What can you invest in and what can you not invest in terms of investments. Family and medical leave, these were just, there have been many, too many to mention here. Coming out of the COVID era of what is acceptable in family and medical leave. So we kind of come alongside current law of what FMLA can be used for. 5:200, these are all personnel in the 500 in section 5. This was updated, that this really doesn't impact us much, but when hiring, we're assigning educators for physical education, music, visual art to prioritize someone who is licensed. It is not unusual practice when you have hard to find staff that someone might teach 4 classes of something, social studies, and have a background in music and teach 1 class in music. 4 classes of English, and I'll teach 1 class in PE. This really requires that those people are license holders in that area. Resignations, 5:210. This was updated to the resignation of teachers during a school term and what those procedures are. There's a big change in licensure. Previously, your educator license could be seriously impacted if you resign during school term while school is in session. This brings that in. Substitute teacher, this makes it just allows more time that a retiree who's in the teacher retirement system can spend being a substitute teacher. Helps us acquire retirees who would like to substitute teach. Leaves of absence, this comes in line with the Child Extended Bereavement Leave Act, Victims of Economic Security and Safety Act. So these are 2 acts. If you have a loss of a child, Victims of Economic Security Safety Act, you have a catastrophic impact, a house fire, in terms of coming into leaves of absence. 5:330, this aligns with the loss of a child by suicide or homicide, allowing particular parameters for leaves. School accountability, 6:15. This provides that ISBE shall provide us with technical assistance. It's really more for ISBE that in school improvement planning, they have to help us and provide that help in our school improvement plans. 6:50, this is related to goals for other school-based activities. This is basically wellness. We do a lot with wellness already with the nutrition through Quest. We kind of come fully in line with those requirements. This is curriculum content. You probably heard some bills are moving along with this policy, but this is including Native American history and then also instruction in the dangers of fentanyl. The bill that I told you that was pending goes even deeper than this policy requirement with fentanyl education. Library media program, this is a kind of catch-up from state law over the summer. This policy was updated requiring districts, if you want to be eligible for state library funds, state funding, you have to develop, we've done it, you've done it as a board, a written statement prohibiting the practice of banning books in your collections. Residency, I wanted to propose this because we do not recommend this. And so you might say it's strange to be in this slide deck, but I want you to know what it is that we're not recommending, because what this would allow if you adopted it is that if you're an employee and your child lives outside of district, that you could have a benefit of paying tuition for your child to come into district. Currently, you as a board do not allow anyone to come into district who is outside of district through tuition payment. So it would obviously be at odds with other policies and practices that you've had. But we just wanted to highlight that.
Why do you guys not recommend that?
We do, it's probably a very long explanation, but if you do get into allowing tuition-based, if you opened up students coming in who pay tuition, you would have to have a method of deciding who comes in, who doesn't come in. And you likely would have to open up a situation where anybody who applies, because of equal access, if they can pay, they can come. So it adds a whole new layer for you of vetting folks. Most districts in Illinois do not allow transfers in via tuition.
So why are they so is that common that most people are not adopting this, or is it just us?
It is. Yeah, no, it's very common. I don't know a district around us that allows tuition-paying students to come in. If you adopted this, you'd be giving a benefit to your employees that no one else has. And because you don't allow anyone to pay tuition to enter, we would not recommend that you adopt this. Student appearance, this is an update on law. This, Dr. Green, this gives him a little interesting graduation. We started this last year. Yeah. I did. I'm going to come to it in just a second. I'm ahead of myself. So this policy was updated to prohibit denying students the right to wear or accessorize your graduation attire. We really started that last year, but we were surprised how many students didn't take advantage of it. So this year, we'll come in line with this. We recommend that you adopt it. This is the Illinois Human Rights Commission. And so we'll try to have a dignified ceremony, but also celebrate students' culture, ethnicity, religious. Student behavior, 7:190. This policy is updated to amend academic dishonesty, bringing into your academic dishonesty policy that an ill use of generative artificial intelligence is cheating.
Yep.
Right. 7:270. This brings into play a number of things that we already do. Our allergy plans coming into alignment with that. We already have undesignated Narcan. This is a mandate to do that. We did that a year and a half ago. And then also, if we so choose, if we have a child where we need to have what's called unassigned oxygen, we don't generally do that, but you never know in the future. You could have a student who requires oxygen to be available in a variety of different sites. Why a special policy on this? Oxygen is oftentimes prescribed medically, and oxygen is dangerous to store. So we just have to be aware of that. 7:290 is bringing us into suicide, depression, awareness prevention. This requires really everybody, teachers, administrators, school support personnel. We already do this to be trained in the signs of mental illness, trauma, suicidal behavior, national suicide line, crisis text. And then finally, 8:30, this was updated to align with you being able to talk about this in closed session. This gives you greater authority to deny individuals that you deem unsafe or have violated your conduct rules from coming onto school property. And really, to be honest, this is in response to school place and workplace violence, right? Oddly enough, even though you might hear school place violence, really school place violence only accounts for about 1/3 of workplace violence in the United States. Most workplace violence is perpetrated by individuals who are disgruntled employees, disgruntled with a spouse who works someplace, disgruntled with a spurned, romantic relationship, someone who's felt that they were cheated in some way. So this allows you greater latitude for people. These are just a number of policies. I always include this that just had footnotes and legal references changed. And this is 2:40 that I'm putting in a first reading. It is not press 113. This is something I think you should do, talking to Mrs. Lopez Caniva. She asked me to begin the process of Student Board of Education members, to complete that by the end of the school year. And I think the first step that you should take is coming in line with the actual process you had. Initially, you had a representative from Central, a representative from East. You saw such a rich group of candidates that you said, well, it seems like the most sophisticated folks are juniors and seniors. You have all seniors this year. You have 2 sitting board members, 2 student board members on committee. This revision is designed to give you that latitude to kind of come in line with really how you're practicing. So we've written that policy change just to be, far more open, so that you can deem the representation that you want on the board. And the proposed change is in front of you in paper if anybody has questions. Again, tonight you're not voting, but this I think would be the first step in us moving forward with student board members.
An appropriate number of students. That is to be determined by us.
It is. Because that's actually what you did last time. You said instead of 2, you said 4. You wanted to see 2 on the board, and then 2 on each of your committees.
That would also act as substitution in the event that we,
Right, you also thought if Ms. Del Ponte or Ms. Osei couldn't complete their term, then you would have 2 others. But initially, the policy you approved in January 2023 was 1 individual from East, 1 individual from Central. When you had 53 applicants last year, you were feeling differently about it, right? So I think you want to give yourself, that first year learning that latitude, so I'd recommend you make this policy change.
Thank you.
That's press, as always, in the next month, if you have a question about any of these, let's go deep on them so you know what we'd be recommending to approve in March.
I feel like we should definitely have a ability in the event some of the student board members can't make it. Like, we should have reserves, because
Right, I think you have to, and this gives you the latitude to talk about that when you go through the next process.
All right. Thank you. All right. Do I have a motion to enter into closed session to confidentially discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity under the ILCS Chapter 120/2C1.
So moved.
Second.
It's been motioned by Dr. Sean, second by Mr. Travis. Roll call.
Shimon Rogers,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
Navarro,
Yes.
Chase,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yeah.
Lopez Caniva.
Yes. You know what, we'll have a 5-minute break before
Yeah.
we go into